I can introduce myself while Lisa is getting her printout. My name's Andrew Smeltz. I'm a planner with Southwest Region Planning Commission, and I'm helping Lisa, and JB is here with us also from Southwest on the update to the long-range regional transportation plan called Southwest Connects. And as Lisa will explain, we have the region divided up into corridors, and we're studying the transportation of the region corridor by corridor. So for tonight, it's Route 9 West. And does anybody want to unmute and introduce themselves and say what town they're from and what brings them here tonight while we're waiting to get set up?
Sure. I'm Dave Meter from Keene. I'm a member of MRCC. I'm a member of a couple of nonprofits in Keene. I'm retired. In the old days, I spent several years in the state legislature, and I spent several years in the city council, but I'm retired from elected politics now, but I'm interested in regional transportation, and particularly in public transportation as an alternative to, the car. And so that's an interest that I have. So that's why I joined
nice to meet you.
MRCC.
And I guess I'll go next. My name is Dwayne Chickering. I'm the police chief for the Chesterfield Police Department. Clearly, I have a vested interest in Route 9 because we are the ones that handle the accidents and the traffic flow going through there. So it's going to be a nice conversation to see where we want to go in the future to make sure the roads provide being as safe as possible getting through the community.
Excellent. Thank you, Chief.
And I guess I'd go right after Dwayne. My name is Steve Laskowski. I'm a 70-year resident of Chesterfield, so I have a little bit of perspective. And I've also served as a patrol officer on the Chesterfield Police Department for a number of years, so I have a pretty good clue as to what's going on out on Route 9.
Great, thank you.
Gary Wynn.
Well, I'm Joe
Chair.
Broadbine. I'm a member of the Chesterfield Planning Board and obviously interested in what happens in Chesterfield.
My name
Gary
is.
Wynn. Yep, go
Oh,
ahead.
go ahead, Gary.
Gary Wynn, Chairman of the Board of Selectmen in Chesterfield.
John Zanotti. I'm in Chesterfield, member of the ZBA, and I live off of Route 9, so I have a safety interest in Route 9.
While we're on the Chesterfield theme, Maria Bissell. I'm on the planning board in Chesterfield, just listening in for feedback.
Nice to meet you. Is that everybody? All right, let's get this show on the road. Sorry about that, everybody. Got my notes printed. Thanks for joining us tonight for the presentation on New Hampshire 9 corridor. This is a series of 8 of these meetings. This is the only one on this corridor. My name is Lisa Murphy. I'm senior planner at SWRPC, and I'm joined today by Andrew Smeltz, who's also a planner here, and JB Mack, who is a principal planner. Tonight we'll be giving you a high-level overview of the Route 9 West corridor, which will run about 15 minutes for the presentation, followed by several slides with questions for you to provide local input that we need to be able to include in the plan. SWRPC is one of 9 regional planning commissions. One of the roles that we have is to create and update the long-range transportation plan for this region. The long-range transportation planning seeks to better understand the current conditions and the future demand for transportation and to ensure that the needs are met for populations in this area. Among other information, the plan contains a vision, goals, objectives, data and information about existing conditions, documentation of transportation challenges and opportunities, and a section that documents planned projects that are currently underfunded projects. Back in 2014, at the encouragement of the New Hampshire Department of Transportation, SWRP changed its long-range transportation approach to a corridor-based approach, which is what we're doing now. Sub-regional approach rather than a system-wide approach that looks at all three. The system-wide approach looked at all 34 towns through one lens. Instead, this identifies 8 corridors, as you can see in the different colors. So we're looking at them separately. These corridors connect major destinations within the region, and they connect Southwest New Hampshire to surrounding regions and neighboring states of Vermont and Massachusetts. Corridor analysis approach has a number of benefits over the system-wide approach. For example, corridors tend to mirror the predominant movement of people, goods, and information, and regionally significant economic activity. The corridors are a good scale to which to engage regional stakeholders that feel more comfortable offering and sharing feedback on the regional or local matters that they are intimately familiar with. And also at the corridor level analysis, it encourages a more complete investigation of non-transportation factors that impact our transportation system, such as land use and economic development planning, which tend to be administered at the local level. So rather than it just including Route 9 itself, and it also includes 63 and 119. New Hampshire 9 West is one of 8 corridors in the Southwest New Hampshire, and it's one we're focusing on right now. Includes transportation assets in Keene, Chesterfield, and Hinsdale. Each corridor represented in the Southwest connects in our report. Southwest Connects includes a backbone arterial highway, which, as I mentioned, is the green, the darker green, the wider one, as well as a network of other arterials and collector highways linking to this backbone. As you can see in some of these other ones, Route 12 has smaller arterials. Same with Route 10 and Route 10 down through here. So, we're not just limited to the backbone. In addition to the highway, Southwest Connects recognizes other transportation-related assets and services associated with the corridor. For example, in the case of 9 West, it is the only corridor in the region that has an official park and ride lots, which is in Chesterfield Gorge. The plan also recognizes the Fort Hill Branch Rail Trail in Hinsdale, which is a state-owned transportation asset. On the map, you'll notice that some geographic areas have dark outlines down in here. And in Keene, right? Let's do the Keene one, but it's right in there. In this case, Keene and downtown Hinsdale, these areas are called nodal centers in the plan, and they represent the more dense areas. So they certainly have different needs. Generally speaking, the plan recognizes these areas as opportunities to develop more local transportation options, like walking and bicycling, as well as opportunities for intermodal transfer points between regional and local travel. The main artery of this corridor is pretty obvious. It's Route 9 as it extends from Keene to Brattleboro for approximately 14.4 miles. Heading west from Keene with a population of 23,047, this corridor extends to Brattleboro, Vermont, which is a smaller population center of 12,046. This corridor is important because it connects homes and jobs, tourism, commerce, etc. The other comment that I'd like to make about this corridor is that it connects the region to I-91 in Vermont, which is a very important asset that our regional and local economies rely on for conducting business with outside areas. SWRPC does not have any interstate highways of its own in the region. State and regional connection. Most SWRPC towns use the New Hampshire West corridor to reach Brattleboro and I-91, to reach major points north and south, such as Lebanon and Springfield, Mass. As you can see, it goes in both directions. It's a very important connection. Wyndham Regional Commission towns also, this is Wyndham Regional in Vermont. They also use 9 West to reach major destinations such as Keene, Manchester, and Portsmouth and beyond. Ways to improve safety in the corridor. This always amazes me when I see the safety maps. This is a safety map and it shows the general locations of crashes and the level of severity. The red is fatalities. The yellow orangish color is serious injuries. I know that Chesterfield has a similar map in their master plan because we did this for you. One of the things that is a little bit difficult and kind of misreads the accuracy of it is that these points only tell the most severe status. For example, the one that I'm pointing at says a fatality, but it doesn't tell you how many fatalities. It also doesn't tell you if there were serious injuries also. Same with any of the yellow-orange ones. It tells you there was a serious injury, but there could have been 5 serious injuries. But at least it shows you the areas where there's concentration of accidents, so that you can start to pay a little bit of attention as to what can we do to make them safer areas. Over the 2011 to 2019 time period, there were a total of 9 fatalities. Keene and Hinsdale have adopted complete streets policies, which prioritize the safety of all road users. That's one way to combat it. There have also been at least 2 road safety audits in this area. A road safety audit is something that a town can request when they feel there's an area that needs to be looked at by different professionals. Usually includes state DOT, SWRPC representative, possibly an engineer, but it also includes local level, road agent, police chief, fire chief, so that we can talk about some of the concerns and potentially some solutions. There's been 2 safety audits in this area. There have been some done here in the familiar area that is a concern, and that's 63 and Route 9. Roundabout was built at the bottom of Base Hill Road intersection, and that's another way to address safety issues. And also Chesterfield is one of 3 locations at a Route 963 intersection that's participating in a pilot of signage to alert drivers on the main line of approaching traffic from 63. So if you've seen that sign, then that's why it's there. All right, this is an inflow outflow chart, and it shows the number of workers coming to work inside the 3 towns, which is 12,225. So they work in the corridor, but they live outside of it. This number here represents the number of people who live in the corridor and work in the corridor. This number here, 8,044, these are people that live in the corridor but commute out to go to work at other locations. This has a significant impact on the number of travelers within the corridor. I like to use that in master plans as well. So this slide is, at the end of the day, who are we planning transportation for? And the answer is people. On this slide, SWRPC shows segments of the population that live in the corridor because different groups or people tend to have certain transportation needs, as can be seen by representing a specific transportation market. Some groups don't drive, some have less resources such as money or time, and some have distinct lifestyles that separate them from others in terms of transportation preferences. The youth, there are 17% of the corridor population is made up of youth, age 17 and under. The higher concentrations of youth are in Chesterfield, so it's higher than average, it's 24%. Downtown Hinsdale also has higher than average at 21% of the population. And Hinsdale itself has a higher average at 19% of the population. Only a small population of this group can drive. Next, we have young adults, ages 18 to 34. The percentage of young adults is 29% of the total population. This is largely driven by the higher learning institutions based in Keene with 34%. So Keene's got an above average population of young adults. There is some evidence that millennials are less interested in owning a car and more interested in having other transportation options. So that makes them a little unique to this group. Population of middle-aged people is 36%. Keene's young adults population demand drives this number down somewhat. This population tends to demand high mobility and transportation flexibility. Seniors, percentage of today's seniors make up about 18% of the corridor population. Chesterfield and downtown Hinsdale have a higher percentage of seniors than average. They have 22% in Chesterfield and 19% in downtown Hinsdale. 16% of the population is considered in the low income category, and that is those that are at or under 150% of the poverty level. Part of this is because of the student population in Keene. Keene's low income population is higher than average, and it's 17%. Downtown Hinsdale also has a higher percentage, and that's 19% of the population. So this group, low income populations, can be very sensitive to transportation expenses. Single parent families. 43% of all families living in the corridor area are headed by single parents. Higher proportions of single parent families can be found in Keene at 48%. And single parent household tends to need a flexible transportation options to deal with time constraints. Individuals with disabilities make up 14% of the corridor population. Hinsdale has a slightly higher than average with 15%. Population projections. These drive me crazy when I'm working on master plans because it always raises a lot of questions. But there's many factors to consider, and they're updated every couple of years by the state planning department. So Chesterfield, let's see, population increases also have an impact on the corridor. The table shows the population projections until 2040. There has been a decline in the number of residents in recent years for Chesterfield, Hinsdale, and Keene. However, there's an expected overall increase in the corridor and the region by 2040. As these numbers increase, so will the number of trips generated in and through the corridor. Pairing this slide with the previous slide on the special populations helps us to anticipate the varying needs of transportation options. Even if the number of residents remains the same, projections indicate that the senior population will increase from 15% to 26% of the total population between 2010 and 2040. So in the next couple of slides, we're looking to get some information from you. And we want to try to limit it to about 5 to 10 minutes, but I think, you know, if we are on a topic and somebody's really rolling with it, we can go ahead and extend it a bit. So for this one, where are places that you've driven where you weren't comfortable with visibility around a curve or over a hill, or a place that has traffic signs and pavement markings that are insufficient, insufficient sight lines due to overgrown vegetation, mailboxes or poles, or other objects? Anybody have any that they would like to share with us right now? And again, it doesn't need to be right on Route 9. I think Route 9 is pretty well clear of vegetation at the intersections. Could be more on 63.
I can tell you, I guess I'll start. Dwayne Chickering, the police chief. We have 3 locations that we have a high propensity of the higher speeds. One's on Stoddard Hill, which is stops at Stowe Drive at the top, and at the bottom is Brook Street. And you'll see on the previous slide, you'll see that we've had fatal accidents on this corner. They've tried to alleviate that with the striping at the very top of the hill. They made the passing lane shorter, and then in doing so, they bottlenecked the end of the passing lane right at Poocham Road, which is a left-hand turn, and that's a dangerous area to get rear-ended. On top of that, we're dealing with tractor trailer trucks that they see this expanded location that's open, and they park in the breakdown lane. We did just recently petition the state to put in no parking signs. Unfortunately, what's happening with the parking signs is that then they just park farther down the road along Route 9 and still becomes a traffic hazard. As you continue east on Route 9, we also had the entrance towards Route 63 intersection. Going up the hill towards Freedom Drive, that used to be a passing lane through there. The state has recently removed the passing lane and has made it a regular travel lane and then a left-hand turn lane. And thankfully, since that time, we have not had any accidents. Part of the decrease in the accidents at the intersection of Route 9 and 63 is not only the flashing lights that turn on from cars that are entering Route 9 from 63, but also the fact that we have gotten rid of the passing lane, which forced the traffic to go slower. Our next spot down going east on 9, we also have businesses along Route 9, such as Big Deal. That's been petitioned with the state. They are currently in the process of putting in a turn lane for Big Deal because we had a very high propensity of motor vehicle accidents. They also closed down one of the entrances to Big Deal to try to help alleviate some traffic issues there as well. As we continue east on 9, we do have issues with a Glebe Road intersection with some accidents through there. To make a right-hand turn when going west is sometimes cumbersome, or crossing Route 9 at that location because of speeds coming down Chesterfield Hill. So we do a lot of traffic enforcement at the top of Chesterfield Hill. And I can tell you that, it is not uncommon for us to see 85s and 90s coming up over the hill, and that's going up the hill and not down the hill. And so that's kind of just the taste of the traffic that's happening on Route 9 right now.
Great, thank you. That's exactly
Do you
what
have
we're
any
looking for.
observations about Route 63 or Route 9A or anything?
I can tell you on Route 63, when you pass the North Hinsdale Road, I'm going to have to back up. When you're coming from Hinsdale, you have a steep decline and then a winding turn to the left. And as you round that corner, you end up near North Hinsdale Road. That has a propensity in the wintertime of freezing over. And that has happened for years and years. And I've always had concerns of traffic losing it. But on that corner specifically, we've had 2 fatal traffic collisions and some injury accidents, which include somebody being paralyzed with the neck down with the ability to make that corner. It is an ongoing, when we head towards into Chesterfield from there, that's a long straightaway. We do have issues with speeding in front of the school that we deal with. We have put up signage. I am working with a school on putting in radar school lights that tells you what your speed is to try to help alleviate the traffic. We are in discussions also of sidewalks for kids to walk down the road. When you cross Route 9 going past the lake, that is an ongoing issue with speeders. We usually have a radar trailer out there to try to slow traffic down, but instead we've just had cars out there to try to slow the speeders down through there. And that really is the issues with most of our complaints or the accidents.
We have a couple hands up in the here. Steve, do you want to unmute and speak?
I'd be happy to. I'd like to piggyback on my chief's comments, and I think he would agree, and prior police chiefs would agree, that a large portion of the problems that we have in town with the speeding is that this is a transient population that moves through here. A lot of tourists, a lot of out-of-towners, and you can improve signage, you can improve sight distances, but these people are looking in many other places, and the last place they look is the bumper of the car in front of them, unfortunately, and then we have to deal with it. And also, as Dwayne said, speeding across the whole spectrum of the town and area roads has greatly increased since beginning of the COVID pandemic. I mean, we kind of adopted a little more of a hands-off stance back then to avoid contact for both of our safeties, and everybody is kind of edged up. So enforcement is going to have to be a major portion of resolution of any safety concerns within the corridor.
Thank you. John, do you want to speak next?
Sure. I live directly off of Route 9 on a street that my access is Locust Lane, and the line of sight is not satisfactory. And as a result, you have to actually pull out onto Route 9 a little bit further than you really should, thinking that there's no cars coming. And as soon as you start entering onto Route 9, there's cars that are coming at 50 miles an hour. So now you have to really step on it to try to catch up to the speed of those cars. So line of sight for me is a big issue in our particular area, and we are closer to the bridge than what Dwayne and Steve were talking about a little bit earlier. So that's a big concern for me.
Thank you. Gary's got his hand up also. Go ahead. Oh, muted still.
One location that we've had problems with this year actually been pretty well taken care of. I'm not sure whether the state's doing it or not, but the exit of Brook Street onto Route 9, the knotweed growth along that bridge makes that a totally blind entrance if you're trying to look east. It does need constant attention to deal with the growth of the knotweed there to keep visibility. I do agree with Dwayne's comment on the Stowe Mills entrance going up Route 9, Stoddard Hill. I'm not sure the answer, but that merging a truck lane in the middle of a hill just strikes me as an accident waiting to happen. People come roaring up and all of a sudden the truck starts to merge because he's running out of road, and they're going from 50, 60 miles an hour down to 25, 30 that the speed of the truck is. And but the problem is there that you still get the issue at Stowe Mills entrance as well, and for them to cross a 3-lane highway to get a tractor trailer out of that entrance onto the road is not a good situation either. But I have heard some comments recently, and I can't substantiate any of them, but see of some of the new guardrails have been put up. Some people have been complaining about them causing difficulty for smaller cars being able to see coming out of some of the intersections, but I can't speak to any of those in detail myself. And I'm not sure what intersections they were referring to. I don't think the new guardrails are any higher than they ever were. But I have to agree. One of the major problems is the people in the morning, they're rushing to work. They're going both directions, and nobody leaves for work on time. So they're trying to make up for lost time, and it's enforcement. I know the department's been doing a good job of enforcement. I've found several of the spots they like to sit, and I think they, are making some good decisions on where they're trying to catch people there. But when I talk to the chief and he tells me that an average speed is sometimes 70 miles an hour going on Route 9, it strikes me that a lot of the issue is not necessarily the road, but a lot of the issue is the fools that are driving it.
And if one thing I can add, though, especially near John Zanotti's place, is that cars are coming off of Route 91, and and that speed limit is 65. But if you're going 65, you're impeding traffic at 91. And then they turn into Chesterfield, they hit a 35 zone, and we call it the fish in the barrel, because rarely do you see people actually doing 35 except for the locals coming up through. And it's on average 50, 55, 60. And then headed right towards the intersection where John is at Locust, where that corner is that he was talking about. It makes for a dangerous area.
This is JB Mack from the Planning Commission. I'm curious if you folks want to weigh in on the rumble strips and if they've been effective from a safety perspective, in your opinion.
I definitely do.
Yeah.
Yes. I want to suggest that the rumble mumble strips back a couple of years ago were an absolute nightmare for our town, as evidenced by the number of people that showed up for the, whoever it was, Department of Transportation, whoever it was better attended than by our regular town meetings, because it was such an uproar in our town. So the state did what they should do, and they listened, and they made corrections to the rumble strips, which were atrocious in our area. So they made a correction, and I want to compliment them on doing that. What I don't want to see happen is you're repaving from 63 to Keene. So if we have learned anything from the recent uproar in our town, we had better not create rumble strips in the fog line. And not even mumble strips. I heard something about mumble strips. Those are not tolerable in our town. So in the center lane for, head-on collisions, absolutely. I think our town has supported that. That is the right thing to do. But anything towards the fog line, and Chief, I'm sure you can enter into this as well, should not be happening in our town. So good for you for making the correction. Please learn as a lesson learned not to do it again.
Let me be clear that we didn't install the rumble strips. It's merely.
But you have a voice.
Right. I think what DOT probably should have learned is that there could have been more of a public process before they installed them. I don't think there was enough of a education or public involvement to weigh in on whether that was a good idea.
This is Dwayne Chickering. I like the center line, and I also like the rumble strips in the breakdown lane. However, these were put on the fog line, and what it became was kind of like ping pong. Once you hit the one on the fog line, you bounce back the center line, and realistically, you really couldn't make it along Route 9 without hitting the rumble strips on either side. So center line, great, fantastic. If they had placed it more center line in the breakdown lane, I think that would be an effective use for the rumble strips. But it was my understanding is that there was lobbyists of bicycles that lobbied, saying that if the rumble strip was in the center of the breakdown lane, that would impede the traffic of the bicycles on Route 9. I do hear their concern with that, but when we have the 14,000 cars that travel through there and the 1 or 2 bicycles, we have to look at the safety, the overall safety of the traffic flowing through there. But having at least the center rumble strips is at least a nice addition for safety along here.
Thank you both for answering the question.
Did they recently take the center line away in some areas?
The paving that they're doing right now from Freedsom to Keene, that was recently taken out, but the rumble strips are still in effect at other portions on Route 9.
Are they putting them back in or no?
They are right now. They are paving, like right in the means. We're just getting it to 63 from Freedsom. We've had some delays with that. I'm assuming they're going to go back in because they haven't taken it out along Route 9 up to that point. So I can only assume that they're going to continue with the center rumble strips.
Thank you.
If you are interested, I can get you a phone number to the person in charge of that. If you have an interest in inquiry into whether or not the rumble strips are going to be going in, I can help you out with that.
I think we probably have that, JB, or do we?
Yeah, we can get the contact information. Thank you for the offer, though.
Sure. So the other question I have is, anybody have any potential solutions other than what I heard so far was you're already doing some, the state's already doing some with turn lanes, or you're requesting turn lanes. Speed enforcement was another suggestion, and trimming back some vegetation for better sight lines. Any other suggestions on solutions? How do you think the sign, is the sign warning, is doing at 63?
I think if we had not taken out the passing lane west of that location, we would have a better idea of how effective that those lights are. I have received comments from the public that said that they do like those and they do make a difference. One thing that we could add is the potential of maybe highlighting more of what the speed is coming into New Hampshire from Route 91 or from Brattleboro to help assist, because that is a business district down there. We do have a lot of businesses. We do have a lot of T-bone accidents in that area. And it's some of it's due to impatience on trying to cross the east and westbound travel lane and the turning lane, but some of it also is contributed to speeding along that area.
Okay, any last minute ones before we move on to the next? It took a little more than 5 minutes, but it was important, so. Okay.
I'm not sure if, oh, my apologies. I don't know if I got it under the gavel or before the gavel. This is kind of a general question, but it does have to deal with safety in general through having these east-west corridors going through so many small towns. Is there any vision or anything in the plans to have an east-west corridor in the Southwest region or in the South? So it takes some of the traffic away from 9 West and 101s and all of those routes that go right through towns.
Lisa, I can try to answer that if you'd like.
I was just gonna
Okay.
ask you.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think that's likely. It's extremely expensive to build new roads. The state, up until last year when Congress passed the bipartisan infrastructure law, there's really just been enough funding to sort of repair and sort of keep in place our existing infrastructure and take care of our infrastructure. And even that has been a challenge. You've probably read in the newspapers that we have so many red list bridges in our state that the state is struggling to keep up with. So the days of building bypasses, at least for the foreseeable future, is very unlikely. And it's partly because of the cost, but also because of the feasibility, the environmental impacts, the impacts on private landowners, those kinds of things, that it's just really extremely difficult to do at this stage of the game.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next one is transportation options. Are there modes of transportation that are missing within the corridor, and what are some potential solutions? So thinking back at slide 10 with the pictures of the diverse populations, what are some of the ways to meet the diverse needs of the people using this corridor?
This is Dwayne. I guess one of the things that I see that's missing is the potential of potentially having like a regional airlines at the Keene Airport that would take them to different cities like Boston or Portsmouth or Portland. And that could alleviate some of the traffic, not necessarily on Route 9, but maybe along 101 and Route 9 towards Concord. That may alleviate some of the traffic through there.
Okay.
Gary, I will comment that I believe Hinsdale is currently being served somewhat by the Brattleboro bus system. I believe they do go into Hinsdale now as a swing in there. I am a little at a loss to feel it would be terribly successful in Chesterfield, as much as a number of people do make comments about public transportation sometimes. We don't have any, it would be a lot of miles covered to pick up people because of the way the population is spread out. I mean, if the day should come that we do come up with a senior housing facility or something like that, I think something would be very helpful there, but I'm not sure that a bus would be fine, or a busing system would be financially stable in this community.
Chief, I heard you mention something about talking to the school about sidewalks. I'm just curious if you could talk more about that and where you see that going.
So I've been talking with the school principal. There is a grant out there that we're looking at to see if it's feasible. One thing first and foremost is the school lights with feedback, with the radar feedback on there. But the other piece is that we have a lot of students that walk along Route 63. And if you ever walked along Route 63, there is no place to walk but in the roadway. They also have cross-country track, which goes from the school down to Twinbrook Road to go running through the woods down through there. So we are looking at that as a safety concern, but still, I think in the ground routes, because of the summertime right now, my plan is to meet up with the school principal prior to September to discuss some of the different options with the lights and the potential of putting in a crosswalk or the sidewalks.
Thank you. I've also heard that some of the seasonal residents that live on 63 off of Spofford Lake I know when DOT was working on a project in that area vicinity several years ago that I guess there's a lot of people that walk through there. Any complaints, or has that been pretty smooth and working okay in that area?
There's always been complaints. That includes actually North Shore Road, Route 9A, which encompasses Spofford Lake. But the reality is that there is no place to put additional sidewalks through there unless
Right.
they're going to be putting a bypass behind those houses on 63, which would end up by North Shore Road. But the bypass was brought forward to the town maybe 15 years ago, and that was shot down. So,
Yeah.
but there hasn't been any discussion of actually just doing sidewalks just for the runners and bicyclists.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Yeah, this seems to be one that we discuss a lot, and getting things off the ground is one of the difficulties, and making it last is also a problem.
Well, Lisa, I think you have to recognize that Chesterfield has a large number of people in that just 40 to 60 age range, and we like our cars, and we like to be alone in our cars because we sing and we smoke, and the other 5 people that might carpool with us don't care for that. So you have I think a built-in resistant population to mass transit solutions in this particular community because of the demographic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's something just to keep in mind with the increase in the median age. All right, resiliency against natural and human-caused hazards. This is pretty bad. This was Alstead, and we've seen a few others like that. Maybe not quite to that degree, but are there areas that are prone to flooding or natural hazards within the corridor area? And are there also areas that are vulnerable to human-caused hazards, which would be like a truck accident with hazardous materials, spills, things like that? And if so, what are some of the potential solutions? So one of the things that we are concerned about is as the frequency and intensity of storms continues, we keep seeing more and more of these kind of situations. So what are some of those areas that you think need mitigation?
Gary, Caspian Brook, I've never seen that get to the point of flooding over Route 9. Would you agree with that?
No, I've never seen that come close. Unfortunately, we've allowed a couple of properties to be filled in there that have caused some potential issues on Brook Street, but not on Route 9. The only spots I can think of is possibly going into Westmoreland if the mill pond ever let go. We might see some damage on 63 going toward Westmoreland. And of course, a few years ago, the Beaver Dam went somewhere up on the mountain and took out a chunk of 63 going south into Hinsdale.
Right.
But as far as areas like in Alsted, right tight to the road, I mean, most of these are a little bit, you'd have to go a lot further than dealing right next to the road to avoid there becoming an occurrence. I do know Westmoreland is concerned about the mill pond. They have sent us a letter asking some questions, but and we do have the state looking at that. But those are, as far as main corridors, those are the only two areas I've seen that come close to even having an issue.
I've got two. There's pooling of water right at that bridge just by Brook Street by EGP Plumbing. If we get a large rainfall, water in that corner right there, and that I've slipped on that. I haven't lost control, but there is a propensity of sliding right across with that. But the other issue is on Route 63, just north of Twinbrook Road in the dip, there's a beaver pond right there. And that we just called the state on last week, as a matter of fact, because the beavers had really built up the dam where it was accumulating 100 feet bigger each day. And that was concerning. And that when that got loose last time, that took out Twinbrook Road and took out some houses down there or pretty close to it. So those are the only two that I could think of for the flooding issue.
Well, I think you would also agree, Dwayne, that when we have heavy rains in the summer or winter, there are 4 or 5 places that your patrol cars go to almost automatically. One of the first ones would be just south of 963 by Gateway Drive, where that whole swamp drains in, and we always get 50 to 100 feet of water through there that's running a foot deep. I've seen Brook Street with a foot of water running past Gary's house in some of the big summer rains, and we certainly got a couple in Spofford, Lake Elizabeth. When that gets filled up, that runs across into Church Street, pretty quickly. Not on a state road, but certainly, it does make its way down to 9A. But there are a number of problematic smaller places like that do raise issues.
Well, our gauge is River Road by Connecticut River, and when we know that's getting high, we know there's an issue. But yeah, I'm just thinking along the major thoroughfares for tonight.
How about in Keene along the in relation to Route 9 and West Street?
Well, I wouldn't be able to comment with any positivity with those areas, unfortunately.
Okay, what about areas that are vulnerable to human-caused hazards?
I think we need to put Route 9, right top of that list. I mean, we've got, from what I understand, we have liquefied natural gas traveling regularly on Route 9. I mean, there's tankers of all sorts that are coming off of 91, probably making their way into Keene and industrial places in that area, not to mention a couple of places we've got here in town. Unfortunately, we see a lot of truckers use 63 north around the lake to get themselves up to Route 12 rather than driving to Keene. And I can't say to what's traveling in those vehicles, but there are a number of tractor trailers that use that route, which it's a state highway. I don't know that we can tell them they can't use it, but it's really right there around the lake, not a great place, especially for small tandem trailers going around there. I don't know if they're still doing that. For a while, we had many tandems running that road about once or twice a night.
We also have the railway in Vermont right across the bridge there. That would be the potential, since we control Connecticut River, that would be another potential for Route 9 being shut down.
Any solutions?
If you got them, let me know.
I didn't hear that.
I said, if you have them in reference to preventing accidents, please let me know. I'd love to have them.
Yeah.
I think the biggest issue with tractor trailers that we actually have had in town is, again, back at Big Deal and Stowe Drive with the parking along the road. And the drivers looking for a place to park their truck for extended periods of time because they're limited availability for getting into UNFI. And I mean, there is no place that I'm aware of that truckers are welcome to park for any extended period of time in the region, not just in Chesterfield and Keene.
Okay, any last minute ones, areas? Okay, moving on. This one's dealing with infrastructure needs. Typically, we think of infrastructure as, culverts, bridges, other things that help to create safe roadways, protect the roadways. Any specific locations that you know of that are in need of upgrades or maintenance? It could be that this picture actually shows that this culvert is filling up with some debris, could easily get clogged up, and then the water is going to go over, wash this out, and wreck the road. So.
Well, I think following up on Dwayne's earlier comment, the culvert that goes under the road just south of the North Hinsdale Road, that's washed out almost every spring, I think, for the past 4 or 5 years. And at one point, when we had, I think 2 years ago, when we had the heavy rain, it washed out to the point where the road had to be closed. It took the whole culvert from under the road, and I think there was about a 4 or 5 foot deep hole there, and that there seems to be some kind of a spring or something under there that seems to kind of ooze water all year round. And as Dwayne said, they come down off that mountain at 60, 65 miles an hour, and when that water seeps and freezes, there's a mailbox right straight ahead about 100 yards that takes a beating.
Well, that's one of the things that your hazard mitigation plan helps to do is to get grants for upsizing culverts to prevent such disasters. So keep that in mind if you have something that you come across that's not already in the hazard mitigation plan. You know, we can put it in so that if you want to get some funding for it.
I think the big problem is a lot of the culverts and bridges are sort of an out of sight, out of mind type issue. I know I don't think about them. I just try to keep going fast. So if there's some problem, it doesn't involve me at that point. But I don't think the general public, as proven by us, who are supposed to be knowledgeable about this, are really that much aware of what's underneath us as we're driving down the road.
Right. I mean, here, this picture is a good example of that. You know, you might not even be aware that it's there. Anybody else and any potential solutions? You know, one of the solutions, as I mentioned, was keeping an up-to-date hazard mitigation plan and seeking funding for them. Making sure they're the properly sized culverts. You know, what we used to think of a 100-year storm is no longer a 100-year storm. We need to upsize the culverts to a new standard.
I know one issue that came up as we were discussing a steep slopes ordinance a couple of years ago were the large culverts under Route 9 in the area of Spofford Boat Sales and Maple Road that were installed when Route 9 was redesigned back in 1982. I believe there's a double culvert under there. I believe they're at least 6-foot culverts, and they ferry a lot of water from one side of the road to the other. And I think it's led to silt infiltration and you know, potential chemical contamination from road salt and gas and oil and everything else that's on Route 9 and that leaches off Route 9. So the environmental impact of where those culverts are and how they're situated and how they handle that water might be an interesting thing for the commission to look at.
Okay, John, you had
Lisa,
your hand up?
Yeah, just a comment about the hazard mitigation plan. When we prepared that, one of the key things we wanted to do is get the hazard mitigation plan approved so we could apply for grant money. And one of the things that the highway department was interested in, and it's not major corridor related, but it was culvert replacements. So now that we have the approved hazard mitigation plan, we should be working with our OEM or whoever in the town to be applying for grant money to replace some of the culverts, not major corridor, but in town.
Right. Also, anything that the town does within the Spofford Lake watershed, you know, if you can let me know about that, that would help us to reach the match for that project. So just a little plug for my other project. All right, anything else?
Lisa, I just wanted to jump in and say, if you all aren't already familiar, Southwest Regional Planning can do a culvert assessment to help you measure and map and then assess all the culverts for their compatibility with storms. And we also can have a stormwater drainage system mapping module where we can map and create an assessment of a stormwater system too. So follow up with us if you want more information about that.
I think you already did have one, didn't you? Maybe, did they have a culvert assessment?
What we did a culvert assessment in Chesterfield, but it was for the state roads. I don't believe we've done any of the class 5 roads.
Okay. Well, there's a potential solution. All right. The last slide, I think it's the last one. Yeah. Is So we talked about several different areas. What else did we miss? Is there anything from a land use standpoint that should be talked about here as it relates to the corridor?
I think one of the issues that arises in my mind that we haven't discussed is the effect of development on the Brattleboro side of the Connecticut River Bridge with the installation of the roundabout there. What is that, 10 or 15 years ago now, or maybe more, on a holiday weekend, take Labor Day, take Columbus Day. I personally on patrol have seen vehicles backed up to the Chesterfield Inn waiting to navigate that roundabout. So while it may have worked out swimmingly for Vermont, it's a lot more slushy over on our side of the road.
I would add that there's a backup right across the bridge just about every evening about 4:30.
Really?
I think it coincides with GS Precision getting out of work, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know what impact that the Southwest Regional can have with the state of Vermont, but I think a big part of that problem is that they have eliminated 2 lanes of travel around the roundabout, and the right lane of the 2 lanes as you approach the roundabout in Brattleboro becomes a dedicated right turn lane. And actually, when the people wear the paint off the road and they don't have to obey those arrows anymore, that traffic moves a lot more smoothly when two lanes are allowed to move around there. So if you can encourage Vermont to not repaint those lines, it would probably save us a whole lot of trouble. But I think that's the major bottleneck right there, is it drops it right down to 1 lane, and you get 2 buses and a couple of campers and a couple of pickup trucks, and all of a sudden you've got a mile-long backup.
That's really good feedback. We have good relations with the Regional Planning Commission on the other side of the bridge. And it'd be interesting to see if they feel that those lines have provided any benefit.
Well, they're always going to have a trouble anytime there's a tractor trailer trying to make a 90-degree turn, if you will, going off to CSI. They take up all the lanes.
Yeah.
And it stops all the traffic.
Well, it's a pretty small traffic circle. It's tight. What about anything else are we missing?
Well, I think Chesterfield is going to have to make some kind of a decision on how they want to manage commercial growth along Route 9. I mean, we're in a case in this town where Route 9 is the obvious place for commercial growth if we want to have that to fortify the tax base, and the outlying miles, north and south of Route 9 tend to be really not good for commercial development. So if I know when the road came through in 1982, one of the big thoughts was to limit access to the highway to the extent that the state could, while still allowing the road to be usable for the residents. But there's going to be increasing pressure along Route 9 for we don't have the workforce to support huge factories. So we're probably got to be looking at smaller places, maybe more retail, that are going to be a lot more day trips, trips per day in and out of accesses to that road, which is already dangerous. And I'm going to sound like a broken record. I know enforcement is a big part of that, but there were only so many police, and we can only write so many tickets, without having the people come after us with pitchforks and, blazing torches. So, there's going to have to be some kind of town discussion and regional discussion on what's an appropriate way to manage that growth before we find out that we have a big proposal in front of us. I know back in the late 80s, early 90s, there was a proposal for what was going to be called the Chesterfield Mall that was going to actually run from Tire Warehouse all the way up to the Chesterfield Inn. And the impact of that on Route 9 is, I think I'd rather have the State Welcome Center than to have the Chesterfield Inn, and I didn't want the Welcome Center at all. So, you know, we don't want another Chesterfield Mall scenario to jump up and surprise us without having some background and some forethought into how we can potentially deal with it.
Maria, I see your hand raised.
So Steve actually brought up a good question in my mind. So as far as more retail or more industrial, what worries me, and it's not even just Chesterfield making the decision, it's, you know, Windham County and it's Keene area, Cheshire County. Anytime that any town or city around us decides to bring in more business, which is wonderful, obviously, for the economy, but it directly will likely affect Route 9 west through Chesterfield. So even if that's not, the growth isn't within our town, we're still going to suffer the repercussions from it through Chesterfield, because there is no east-west in this area. It is 9 west through Chesterfield. So my question is, let's say Keene is deciding to, you know, potentially bring in a large industrial sector, or a large employer, or even in Windham County. Is there a way that Chesterfield can say, or has a say with these areas, that if you do choose to do this, then this is what we request. We request that funding goes into, you know, helping us remediate the traffic that we're already seeing. How do we do that? How do we get Chesterfield directly involved with decisions outside of Chesterfield that are going to impact Chesterfield?
Well, Maria, I think this is where the development with regional impact laws come into play, where towns are required, if there's going to be a regional impact, they're required to post notice to the surrounding towns, and they have a certain amount of time to respond to us, and we can kind of hash that out.
You're right to a degree, but the only problem with that is it's up to the planning board to decide whether or not they consider a regional impact. There's no threshold that says you must notify them. You know, it's a planning board decision. And typically, you know, it'd be things like large housing developments or something like that. And Maria, I agree 100% that, you know, it does create rollover effects to the surrounding areas. I worked in a town that we had the same situation, and we had interstate access, we had a ramp, and so we chose to approve a mall. You know, I hate to bring up the mall, because we figured if a retailer like that targets your area, they're going to find, if you say no, they're going to go right over the line and put it in the next town. So the next town gets all the benefits from the taxes and you get the traffic. And it's like, oh, that's not good. So that may be, you know, if that's something you're concerned about, is you have to decide what's right for Chesterfield. And I'm not saying to promote industrial and commercial, but it is a reality that you know, if a business targets your area and you say no, they're still going to find a way, probably, if it's that important.
I guess what worries me is just because it doesn't sound like there is anywhere at any time going to be a dedicated east-west highway. Is there, so there's obviously potential. So, you know, the east gets overpopulated and folks transition to the west or Massachusetts, whatever. When does New Hampshire get proactive about saving money or getting ahead of this east-west? I mean, this has always been the case. So I do understand that there's not funding now, but if there isn't funding now and there's starting to become a need, because there is a need for east-west across this state, especially in our area with the state's funding or the state's funneling up and then crossing over. How do we get that funding started? How do we get that conversation really pushed forward?
This is JB from the Planning Commission. I think the state's always looking at traffic growth, and you saw the population figures that Lisa shared with us all. We're a pretty slow growing area right now. And I think the state is likely to, take their cue from, the traffic trends and the population trends in terms of thinking in those the big picture way that you're thinking right now. So I don't, I'm not sure that I think probably the best course, if this is a concern that you have, might be to maybe talk with your legislative delegation, about this issue. And
could I add something, JB?
Sure.
Are you familiar with the circumventional highway in Hudson? So Hudson, like JB mentioned earlier, that it's like just process-wise very slow and difficult and challenging to build major new roads. In Hudson, New Hampshire, they are trying to build one, and the state actually owns the land in the right-of-way so that they can build it. But it's just the amount of years that, I mean, this is a situation where they already own the right-of-way and they still have no intentions to build it. And Hudson, New Hampshire is a very high growth area. It's a small town that had just developed on all sides very heavily. And this highway is going to help them sort of get some of the traffic around town. And even in Hudson, this project has just evolved very, very slowly. So it's hard to imagine a new project like that, like getting off the ground without, a huge groundswell of support for it. But I would look into the circumventional highway in Hudson for like just kind of a study of how like a new highway would unfold around a town.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any last minute comments before we say goodbye? Okay, so.
I guess I have a question for you, Lisa. Based on the comments and input you've received from several people from Chesterfield and some from Keene, what's your next action?
So in terms of the Southwest Connects, the regional plan that we're doing, we'll be doing another one of these meetings for the Route 9 East. And we've got 6 others to do after that. And then we'll be putting the plan together.
So will Gary, as first selectman of our town or chairman of the select board, will he be receiving a copy of your results or submissions?
Lisa, I can take this. So
okay.
Our schedule is to complete the Southwest Connects plan in a year's time. Like we do with all of our plans, we take the public input and we record that. And what we do is we develop a draft version of the plan that is open for public review, where people can provide additional comments if you like. At that point, we look at those comments and then pass the plan. We have a board of directors that officially passes the plan, and we're looking towards July timeframe next year to complete that process.
Thank you.
Yep. And one other thing, Lisa, were you going to talk about some of the other ways that people can get involved? There are other. Okay, great.
So definitely want to thank you for taking the time to join us tonight. And I feel like we got quite a bit of great feedback. I'm very pleased. If you'd like to get involved more, you can visit our project webpage for Southwest Connects. It's that first link up there. It's wrpc.org/SW Connects. At the website, you can find more information on transportation corridors in our region and information about future events. You can also leave your email to join our constant contact list so that you would be contacted on things. You can read the current version of Southwest Connect's Long Range Transportation Plan that we're currently updating. And we also will have a survey on the website very soon, which will be another opportunity for you to provide feedback. The survey is web-based, so you'll be able to share it easily. And I would suggest, that you ask others in your community to also take the survey. We also have a Facebook page where we'll be posting information about this project and future events. One of the things I wanted to mention that I didn't do on the first slide, I was so frustrated with my slide notes, is that this was being recorded. Does anybody have a problem with the recording? Okay, it's just easier for us to record it and to go back and take notes that way. So thank you for that. So again, thank you for joining us, and you can contact myself. Wow, it says Lisa Munphy. Okay, but it should be a Murphy, M-U-R-P-H-Y, or Andrew, or JB also, but Andrew and I are the ones who are doing most of this. Looks like Maria has her hand raised. Maria,
Yeah,
what can I do for
sorry.
you?
One last question. So the towns were asked to submit something formally by the 29th of July. My question is, are there going to be meetings with the towns afterwards, like a meeting such as this, where the towns are invited to discuss the input that they provide?
Yes, I can take this, Maria.
Okay.
Yeah, what we sent was every 2 years we send all the towns in our planning district a notice that this is your opportunity to nominate a project to the 10-year plan, which is like a capital improvement plan for the state for transportation, transportation related capital improvement plan. And yes, we will be following up with any towns that nominate projects or suggest that a project should be eliminated from the plan. But we do, you might have seen, if you know about this, you probably know that there's an application where we ask for some sort of rudimentary information about your feedback. So if you have a project, we want to make sure that it's something that the town leaders are behind, and you give us a basic information like what is the problem that you're trying to solve and what do you think the potential solution might be. And then we can go from there to determine, if it's eligible and appropriate for the 10-year plan.
So that's actually another question I had. So it sounds like you're just looking for one project that the town nominates, but if there was, let's say like a short list that might come up, is that something that we could submit?
Yeah, absolutely. It could
Okay,
be
and
more
then
than-
it sounds
could be
like,
more than one. The trick,
okay,
the trick with 10-year plan projects is that it has to be on a federal aid eligible highway. And what that comes down to is mostly kind of like the roads we were talking about tonight, the state roads. So it wouldn't apply to, unless it's a bridge, it wouldn't apply to a locally owned road. Bridges are an exception where we can use federal funds to work on bridges, but mostly what's in the 10-year plan, or at least what the regional planning commissions are looking at, are projects that are eligible for federal funding.
okay. Yep, that sounds good. And it sounds like after the towns submit their formal, that SWR or the Southwestern Regional Planning Commission will reach out to the town themselves to discuss it.
That's correct.
Yep, excellent. Thank you. Okay, I think I'm done.
No, good question. Thank you.
All right. Well, have a good night, everybody. And you know how to get a hold of us if you have questions. Take care.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
Good
Lisa.
night, guys. Bye.